welcome everyone. Excited to get everyone together, have another webinar to hopefully give you something tangible to take away and implement in your businesses. We've got a good mix today of clients, prospects, and partners. So we wanted to make sure that we've got content here that appeals to everyone. And so what we want to do today is dive into the general state of cybersecurity and cybercrime. Give you just a little bit of a landscape of where we are today and why we're continuing to talk about things. We also want to talk through some recent attacks that we've seen, some real life examples we've seen with new clients coming on board and other partners that we have. And then also give you good takeaways that you can either implement in your business. Those of you that are clients, you can talk to your client success manager, your fractional CIO in more depth about. And those of you that aren't our clients, we want to give you something tangible that you can take and implement in your own business. So with me today, most of you on the call have probably talked to Mitch before, but we've got Mitch Sowards. He's one of our executive technologists here. And so Mitch has got, I won't name the exact number of years, but quite a few years of service doing technology consulting and helping businesses run their organizations better. So why are we talking about security? Mitch, if you want to go to the next slide. Just to put it in perspective, and I don't want to hit you just with a bunch of statistics, but just showing that this is getting worse, not better. So in 2022, the global cost of cybercrime was about 8.44 trillion. And if you look out to the estimates in 2027, they're estimating it to go up to 23.84. So all of that to say, this isn't something that we can just sit back and say the things that we're doing today are working. We don't have to keep moving the ball forward. So we need to keep focused on those things and making sure that we're constantly evolving. And unfortunately, we're doing what we need to keep up with the threat actors that are out there. And unfortunately, they are putting their highly skilled talents to a bad use. If they would only put those to a good use, I think we would all be in a better place, but that is what it is. And if we move forward to looking at the demographics of who's the victim of this crime, as you can see on the right, or on the left pie chart there, companies 1 to 1,000 make up over 40% of that. And so most of the companies that we interact with fall into that category. But unfortunately, a lot of people have the misconception that they're only targeting the big guys. They're not really targeting the small guys. And that's just frankly not true. 40%, like I said, are in that 1 to 1,000 employee count. And then I just find it interesting to look at how the industry targets change year over year. Finance is making the top of the list. That's generally been the case as we've looked at this over the last 4 years. Manufacturing's been up on the top of the list, but if you look, professional and legal services are now in the top 3. So it's interesting to me that no industry is safe, and we've just all have to keep our guards up. So I promise our intent here isn't just to scare you today. We want to just lay out what's actually happening. Some, like I said, some stories that we've seen, some tactics that you can put in place to protect yourself so that hopefully we'll all just get a little better at this. So at the end of this webinar, you guys will get a survey. I ask that you please respond. We do these type of events on a regular basis. I want to make sure that we're bringing you content that's valuable to you. So give us that honest feedback so that we can make ourselves better and make sure that we're bringing you content that you enjoy. So with that, Mitch, I'll turn it over to you. Those of you on the call, don't hesitate, use the Q&A button, ask questions throughout. If you have questions during the webinar, I'll stop Mitch. I can work those in, or we'll do Q&A at the end. So with that, Mitch, you can take us away.
Thank you very much, Brian, and welcome everyone. Good morning or good afternoon if you happen to be coming in from the East Coast. So Brian left one thing out intentionally. He didn't forget anything, is that he didn't talk about cyber warfare. That is happening more and more now, and I'm sure if you've been reading in the news about what's been going on in Ukraine, is that the Russians in particular, but even the Ukrainians in return, are conducting extensive cyber operations. And on top of that, our rivals in the world, in particular China, continue to attack broadly. And in fact, here's just a few of the latest headlines, right? U.S. warns China could hack. Exclusive Russian hackers are targeting scientists, et cetera. The FBI director made this statement not long ago: the greatest long-term threat to our nation's information and intellectual property and to our economic vitality is the counterintelligence and economic espionage threat from China. When you get this slide deck, check out this link. This article here is actually a link. And the important thing here is that the Chinese state hackers are using a very slow motion approach to being ready to attack. They're no longer trying to break through firewalls. They're no longer trying to exploit vulnerabilities in systems. They are slowly penetrating the users across the country and collecting credentials and access points. So this is a very interesting article that points out how they've actually taken the approach that all of us are the weakness that they want to go after. So as I said, when you get this slide deck, be sure to check out this link and read this article. I think you'll find it very illuminating. So let's talk about your role in security. And when I say your, I mean every single person. I don't just mean business owners. I don't mean just executives. I don't mean IT professionals. I mean every single computer user. I like to say that you are both the front line, the first line of defense, and the last line of defense. And what does that mean? That means that you are where they're going to attack first, right? You'll notice here in this area here, you'll notice that 57% of all attacks start with attacks on people. Right, so that's where you're the front line, right? They're coming after you first these days. They're not doing things like software vulnerabilities anymore. They're not doing things like brute force attacks, right? They're coming after you. And then at the same time, I say that you are the last line of defense because when attackers do come other mechanisms, when they try to come through software vulnerabilities or brute force attacks or anything else, is that when they get through all of the defenses that your organization has put in place, you're the last line of defense. A human being noticing that something unusual is happening or something bad is happening and trying to alert, the proper people, defenders, makes you the last line of defense also. So you are the front line and the last line of defense. So you really need to be aware of what's happening in the world and do what you can to protect yourself and protect your organization. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how do cyber attacks occur? And there's lots of ways that they can occur. They occur in 4 stages. First, identifying a target. Second, gaining a foothold. Third, seeking an opportunity. And then finally, striking. But in each one of those, there's a different path that you can take, right? The bad guys can use a spear phishing attack, or they can use a mass phishing campaign. And then once they've had some success there, they can try and exploit a vulnerability and then do some lateral movement and then do a ransomware attack. Or they could go this path, right? They could do some social engineering, hold position for a while, perpetrate a fraud, right? So they have lots of basic paths that they can follow. But the key ones that we're talking about today, because it's the most common one and it's where you're the front line and you're the last line, is where the threat actors will use social engineering to trick someone into divulging their credentials and maybe even divulging their multi-factor authentication token. Believe it or not, they can get past those defenses also, right? Or maybe they will buy some credentials that have been leaked out onto the dark web. And then the key here is when they do an attack like this, the person they're attacking may not really have anything of value that they want. So what they will do is they will seek for opportunities for lateral movement. How can I get from the foothold I gained, either way, how can I get from the foothold I gained to something of value? Can I compromise more systems? Can I reach out to other people who may have of information or access that is more valuable to me? So as I said, the attackers have lots of mechanisms for doing this, but the most common attack today is what's called a business email compromise, where they try and get to or get through a person through email. Right? So here's what an email compromise would look like. So the first thing that they would do is they set up a fraudulent web page, maybe a web page that looks like a Microsoft web page. And then they send a phishing attack, a mass phishing attack to lots and lots of targets, just hoping that somebody will be fooled, right? And some people will be fooled. When you send tens of thousands or maybe even millions of phishing emails, you're going to get some people who will be fooled, right? So the phishing attack is successful. Let's imagine, in this case, that the phishing attack was successful with a temporary summer intern, Bill. Bill, the temporary summer intern, got fooled and gave away his credentials. Now, Bill is a low-value target. Bill doesn't have anything of interest in his email. Bill doesn't have access to anything that's critical. The attacker can't do much with Bill. But if they can just sit and for a little while and look at Bill's email, right? The attacker looks through Bill's email and he discovers, oh, look, Bill corresponds with Susan, the accounting manager. Well, then maybe I can use a fake email from Bill to Susan to get her to do something, right? So we'll send a phishing email to Susan, and because the email came from Bill, Susan is not on guard. Susan is not really looking out for danger from Bill, and so then Susan's email account gets penetrated.
And Mitch,
go ahead.
Chime in. Something that we're seeing more and more about, and you talked about it briefly on the slide before, is people holding position. And so Bill could be compromised, and that threat actor that's gotten access to his account sits back and watches the way that Bill talks, the way he interacts with people. Historically, you've been able to say, okay, this email sounds weird. This isn't the way that Bill usually communicates. Bill doesn't generally ask for these type of things, and it makes it easy to identify that this isn't Bill. But we're seeing it more and more that they're sitting back, they're watching, they're learning the way that Bill talks, the way his formality or informality, and then interacts with Susan in a way that sounds exactly like Bill, and they're becoming very slick at it. So I
yes, indeed,
just thought to point that out.
And in fact, that is this step here, the monitoring step. They can do monitoring with Bill, but then they'll also do monitoring with Susan, right? And it could be a long time. They could sit and watch Bill and watch Susan for 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, right? To gain the information that they need. So yes, absolutely. The threat actors will sit and observe so that they can effectively impersonate either Bill or Susan, or someone who corresponds with Bill or Susan, right? So in this example, right, they watched Susan's email for 2 months, and they learned what the billing cycles were. They learned who the vendors that she deals with are. In fact, they're on the lookout for a specific vendor who maybe will send an invoice that they want to be paid. And the attacker will intercept that email and make it not arrive in Susan's email box. And then what they'll do is they'll send a fake email to Susan from that vendor that looks just like the vendor, and like the person that she normally deals with. has the correct signature block, maybe refers to the same joke that they talked about previously, and then tells Susan, we've changed our bank account number. We need you to pay this invoice to this new bank account number going forward. Thank you very much, right? And then, Susan's busy and she's corresponded with that vendor before and she knows them and it looks legitimate. And so she just assumes it's normal and she does what the threat actor asks. And she wires money to the threat actor's bank account instead of to the vendor's account, right? And the vendor won't know. All the vendor will know is 30 days or 60 days from now, when the invoice remains unpaid, they'll contact Susan and say, Susan, hey, why isn't this invoice paid? And they'll say, well, I paid that a long time ago. And that's when the fraud will be discovered. And there could have been multiples by that time. Susan could have been wiring money to lots of different people before they discover the problem. So this is all very high level and theoretical. I think it explains how things happen. But let's, just remind you, that what's going to happen is there's going to be a phishing attack, then there'll be lateral movement, and then it can result in all kinds of things like wire fraud.
I know you're going to get into some examples, but I want to throw one out here real quick. We had a prospect that was looking to move to us to provide services, and this whole time their email had been compromised. The prospect hadn't even signed yet to become a client, but we had sent them the proposal, emailed it over, so therefore it was in their email. Their email was compromised. The person sitting there monitoring intercepted that, turned our proposal into an invoice, and sent it back to them for prepayment for onboarding. And prospect reached out to us and was like, this seems like a very weird practice. Why are you trying to bill me before we ever signed the document? And I was like, oh, that is not us. We've got a bigger problem on our hands. So just one quick high level example of how this can happen.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll give you another example that I think is pertinent. We used the fake example of a person named Bill who's a temporary summer intern, and that seems very innocuous. But we also have a client, and they have many locations, and the maintenance manager at one of their locations received an email that he thought was from the local fire department. Right. So it's very legitimate seeming. So, hey, you need to comply with this thing, click on this link, go to this website, fill out this information. And he did. Right. Well, he turned out to be one of those low potential value targets. Now, the Chinese hackers who are trying to get into infrastructure might find him to be a very high value target. But in this particular case, the threat actors didn't think that the maintenance manager in this location was a high value target. But they were able to watch his email and then launch attacks on other people in the organization. And they were able to identify and find some high value targets. So just about anyone can be the entry point that will lead to a high value target, even if they themselves are seemingly a low value target.
Yeah.
You have any other examples you want to share, Brian?
I was actually just going to throw out another one. I belong to a peer group, and the facilitator of the peer group, their personal email got compromised, and it was the email they just used to facilitate their group. So there's no financial gain that person can make in their email specifically. But what they could do is they targeted me because I was in her contacts to say, hey, Brian, I know we talked about this potential prospect for you. Here's a link to their RFP. And the email that came through was going to prompt me to put in my Microsoft credentials so that I could download the RFP. At the end of the day, they had realized, hey, I can't make any progress with this person, but I've got all these people that are in their contact records that I can go after them and see if they're going to be a good target. So a lot of people make the comment, well, worst case, someone gets access to my email. I don't have a lot of proprietary information in there. I don't have anything of value. But you have all the people that you communicate with each and every day, and those people have a lot of value and potential downsides if their email gets compromised.
Yeah, I'll throw out one last one that you may not even know about, Brian, because it happened within the last hour. One of our clients had a situation just within the last hour where someone made a successful phishing attack against them, but they did not do the sit and wait. They immediately started trying for lateral movement, started doing blast emails to everyone in this person's mailbox. And I was one of the people who got that email, and several other people here at Aldridge got that email. So we were able to detect it very quickly and immediately alert our team and alert the client saying, you know, you've had a compromise. We've got to jump on this right away. So just within the last hour, right, we've witnessed this happen to one of our clients.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to move on. They say you are not defenseless against these kinds of attacks, right? Some education will really help here, right? There are red flags that you can be looking for that will help you identify or at least be on guard against these attacks, right? And the first one is when you receive an email from some unknown sender, or maybe a known sender who's contacting you in a new way, right? So maybe you correspond with a person and they normally send you emails from their regular company email account, and suddenly one day you get an email that claims to come from their personal email account or from their iPhone, right, or their Android phone, right? So unknown senders or even people you know who are contacting you in a new way should immediately make your spidey sense start tingling. You know, and up until recent times, like before ChatGPT, you could always be on the lookout for, you know, poor grammar, bad spelling, you know, poor punctuation, you know, things like that, because many of these attackers, as we've mentioned, come from overseas, right? Russia and Bulgaria and Romania and China, right? This is less true today, right? The attackers are getting to be very sophisticated. They can now use, you know, ChatGPT AI to compose their emails for them. But now it might go the other way, right? If you're accustomed to communicating with someone and they normally communicate in, you know, 1 or 2 sentences, and all of a sudden you receive an email from them that is, you know, paragraphs long, you know, that could put you on alert that maybe it was written by an AI and not written by the person you normally correspond with. Another thing is whenever you're being asked to provide what is normally protected information. Anytime someone is asking you to, hey, give me that account number, give me that bank account number, give me your social security number, give me a credit card number, right? Anytime that someone is asking you to give something that is sensitive information, that immediately should set off alarms in your mind, and extra precaution needs to be taken at that time. And of course, you know, strange links or attachments. It doesn't have to be a link, could be an attachment. You know, when I went through the sample attack, right, I mentioned that you know, the attacker wants you to do something, and they may have created a fake website, a fake Microsoft website, for example, or a fake Adobe website. It can be lots of fake websites, right? But they need to lure you in, right? They want you to click on something. You know, they want you to click on the link, or they want you to open an attachment, right? Your spidey sense should be tingling whenever that happens. And then most especially, you should be really having your spidey sense tingling when the email has a sense of urgency, when they tell you that you need to do something right now, because that's how they try and get past your defenses, right? Everyone's busy. They know everyone's busy. And, you know, so they try to scare you with something or tell you that something needs to be done right away. And that something is click on this link, or click on this attachment, or call a particular phone number, right? Any of those things.
I just ran into the gift card scheme again not too long ago. I hadn't heard about it in a while, but someone got a message from the CEO saying, I'm in a meeting. I need you to go get me these gift cards and get me the codes off the back of them ASAP. I need to get them out. And I hadn't seen that in quite some time, but apparently it is still a thing. So,
and that's a good one for the contacting you in a new way, right? Often what will happen is that email telling you to go get the gift cards will say, oh, it came from the CEO's iPhone, right? So it makes you want to believe that, oh, he's sitting in a meeting right now, or she's sitting in a meeting right now and she's only got her phone, and so she's making this request from her phone, right? So spidey sense, right? They're contacting you in a new way and telling you to do something unusual and telling you that you must do it right away. All right, so what does that look like? So here is an example of a mass phishing email, right? And it says here, look, it's coming from Microsoft, it's coming from Office 365, and it's warning you, hey, your password is going to expire today. If you want to retain your current password, you need to immediately do something. You need to click this button, right? Your action is required. This is urgent. Seems kind of legit. But there are red flags in this email. There are red flags that should alert you. In fact, I'll just say that there's at least 3. There are 3 red flags in this email. Y'all can think about that for a moment. What do you think the 3 red flags are? You don't have to answer. Just think about it for a moment. Well, here they are. Here are the 3 red flags in this example. First of all, it's coming for some suspicious domain, right? It's trying to make you think it's coming from Microsoft, but it's really coming from marco.marquard@adhaccessories.es in Spain, right? España. So it's coming from a weird place. And then it's telling you, hey, you got to do something immediately. Your password is going to expire today if you don't do something. And then they want you to push a button, right? They want you to click on something to take you to a place where you'll be asked to put in your password. And that's where they'll get you. Now, these are not the only red flags, right? There are more. And I'll just pause here for a moment to give you a little tip, is that aside from looking at the suspicious domain, anytime you receive an email like this, if you're inside Microsoft Outlook, you can just point at the button or the link, hover your mouse over the button, and Outlook will pop up the exact URL, the exact web address where that link will take you. And you should look closely at it. This is supposed to be from Microsoft, right? So if you hover over this link or over this button, does it say it's going to go to, login.microsoft.com? Or does it say it's going to take you to adhaccessories.es, right? So clearly, if there's a mismatch, it's sending you some weird place, then it's not legitimate. Here's another one. Here's another example of a mass phishing email, and this one's a little more sophisticated, as a matter of fact. Why do you think this one's a little more sophisticated than the previous one? Just think about that for a moment. It looks plausible. There's not really any way for most users to recognize whether or not the sender is legitimate. Look, it says it's coming from SharePoint. no-reply@sharepointonline.com. Most users have no way of knowing whether that's a legitimate email address or not. Do emails like this come from SharePointOnline.com? Maybe, maybe not, right? But it does have this red flag. Someone is sending an email to you and it's claiming to have a document embedded, right? And you click on this document or click on this button, and it's something that you were not expecting.
This looks almost exactly like the RFP email that I got and talked about before. It was
there.
Hey, Brian, here's that RFP that we were talking about. Click here to download it. And yeah.
And what was your clue, Brian, that there was no RFP you've been talking about?
One, the person sending it wouldn't have normally done that. She would have given me a call or something like that. It was just not really the same behavior.
Yeah.
And two, it just wasn't something that I was just expecting, and this is the life that I live, and I'm suspicious of every email that I get.
Yeah. All right. Those two were examples of mass phishing attacks. But now let's move on to a spear phishing attack. Now, what is a spear phishing attack? A spear phishing attack is when the threat actor has taken the time to learn some unique information about you that is legitimate, right? They somehow go out on the dark web, or they check out your LinkedIn profile, or they check out your Facebook page, right? And they learn something legitimate about you, like who you bank with, for example, right? They might have discovered that you bank with ABC Bank, right? And then they send an email specifically to you, not to bunches of people, but specifically to you, and try to fool you because they know something about you, right? So look at this. I know you're working from home, but I really hope you're online right now. I'm in a meeting with that finance guy from Westinghouse, and it looks like we haven't paid the last month's invoice. It was due yesterday. Can you please pay this immediately? They are not happy, right? Here's the account number. Here's the routing code. Please pay them immediately, right? And look, right? It says it's from Sam at ABC Bank, and it says it's from Sam at ABC Bank, right? And it's carbon copied to Kat Taylor at ABC Bank. It looked perfectly legitimate until you look closer, right? If you look really close, the email is not coming from ABC Bank, it's coming from ABD Bank, right? And of course, they are trying to get you to do something right now, right? And they want you to not follow a process. They want you to wire money to a new account. And look at this. They CC'd a real person. The carbon copy it's to a real person, right? So sometimes they can fool you just by linking in some other real person there, right? So this is an example of a spear phishing, and you have to be just as on guard when something looks like it really is coming to you, as you do when it's something that it comes out of the blue. All right. The next thing that you can do is to watch for lateral movement, right? Is that we've already talked about how someone else might get penetrated, and then even when you receive something from a person you know and trust, it could be an example of lateral movement, right? Now, how would you know, right? Well, someone you know has had their email inbox compromised. I just told you about the example that happened within the last hour, right? Person A got compromised, and now because we caught it, and we go and tell the client, everybody else in the company knows person A's email account has been compromised. So you need to be extra on guard when you receive anything from that person today or in the coming weeks, right? If the attacker is using the victim's identity to spearfish for contacts, right? They're going to be looking at things about you that they can use to attack someone else, right? You will, and of course, as we said, you might receive phishing emails from someone that you trust. More ways to be looking for lateral movement, right? No matter who you're interacting with, right? Take those spidey sense tinglings to heart, right? Whenever you're asked to provide protected information or send money in a new way, even if the request comes from someone you know, even if it comes from someone within your organization, even if it's a legitimate email from somebody down the hall, right? Anytime you're asked to send protected information or send it in a new way, pay close attention. Anytime you're asked to do something that's unusual, immediately, right then and there. Anytime you're asked to open strange links or unexpected attachments, even if they're coming from someone within your organization, it could be an example of lateral movement. The third thing you can do is report incidents when they occur or when you think they might occur. As we've just explained to you, given you many examples, cyber criminals are very creative and very persistent. And then the mantra that we use these days is that it's not a matter of if you will get breached, your organization. It's a matter of when it will happen, because it pretty much is going to happen to everyone at a certain point. So what does that mean when we say we want to report incidents, right? Well, here are some ways to do that, and here's how to know when to respond, right? So let's say you get an email that you pretty strongly suspect is a phishing email. You may have looked at the red flags and you identified it and you said, yep, this is a phishing attack, right? You could just delete that email, right? Great, you are safe. But remember, I told you they're going to send out tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of these emails. And if you got one, there is a good chance someone else in your organization will get one. And so you really, instead of just deleting it, you really do need to report it. So how do you report it? Well, the most common way that we like is, use the built-in tools, use the report phishing button, or if you don't have one, let your IT team know. And here are just some examples, right? If you're in Microsoft Outlook and if you use Microsoft Office 365 services, in your ribbon, you should see a button that says report message, and you can click the little drop down arrow, and then it'll say, okay, what are you reporting? Is it junk? Is it phishing? Or is it not junk and you thought it was, I thought it was junk and you want to correct it, right? This is really important. I've had clients ask me, does that really do any good, right? Does it benefit me? Does it benefit my organization any if I report this as phishing? And the answer to that question is absolutely 100% yes. Microsoft processes billions of emails every day, and they take the telemetry from all of those emails to put defenses in place in real time. So let's imagine in your organization, there was a mass phishing attack, and you have 100 people in your organization, and 5 people marked a particular email as phishing within a short period of time. Like within half an hour, 5 people from your organization identified it as phishing, right? Microsoft's analytics is going to go look carefully at that email and maybe affirm or confirm that they think it is phishing. And not only will they block it in the future, they will go into the mailboxes of all 97 other employees in your company, and they'll take that email out, right? So if enough people in your organization identify something as phishing, Microsoft will proactively remove that email from everyone else's mailbox. Gmail offers some similar features, right? If you're just in a web browser and you're doing Gmail, right? Gmail also has a report phishing function, although I can't speak to what kind of proactive actions Google might take compared to what Microsoft might take. So if you get a phishing email, you need to report it, use the report phishing button. If you think you've been compromised, right? And this does happen, by the way, we will have clients call us up or put in a ticket saying, oh my goodness, I got this email. It was an invoice. I thought I needed to pay it. I clicked on it. I gave them my credentials. And then I thought better of it. I looked at it again, and then I realized it was phishing, right? Because report it immediately. Every minute counts. And the bad guys are smart, right? They will send this attack at 5 o'clock on an afternoon, hoping to breach somebody, and then at a bare minimum have all night to do lateral attacks. Sometimes they'll send them on a Friday afternoon, right at 5 o'clock, because they want to have the whole weekend before maybe the IT team catches on. And I have seen both good and bad responses. I have seen people call us up and say, oh, I just gave away my credentials on a Friday afternoon. And we were able to immediately go in, change their password, look for signs of compromise, make sure that there was no penetration, right? And nothing bad happened. And I've had people call us on a Monday and say, Friday afternoon, something weird happened. I thought I might have given away my password, right? And then sure enough, we go in and find all the damage that had been done over the weekend because they waited 3 days to tell us, right? So if you suspect you've been compromised, report it immediately.
I'd like
Go
to
ahead.
I'd like to beat the MFA drum again, because
Okay.
it still shocks me how many conversations we're having about clients that don't want to do multi-factor authentication. It's annoying. I don't want to put an executive in a situation where they've got to enter a code. I just want to keep it easy for them to just enter their password. And I get it. It can be annoying, but personally, you do it every time you log into your bank. You do it every time you log into many, many websites. We certainly need to get past the point of, I don't want to do it because it's annoying, and do it because you know it's the right thing to do. So in those scenarios where someone's calling on a Friday afternoon saying, oh my goodness, I just gave away their credentials. If they have multi-factor authentication in place, great. We've got multi-factor. When they get prompted by that person trying to use their credentials, they'll get a buzz on their phone. They know it's not them. Don't click to let them in. Change your password. Then we're back in good graces. We've got passwords changed. You've got MFA. You're protected. And then just to take it one step further, using unique passwords, so that if you accidentally gave away, use me as an example, I gave away bgregory@aldridge.com. That's my email, and I use the same password at work that I use everywhere else on the internet. Now, not only have I given them access to the network, I've given them access to everything else out there that they could go try on. So that's just a little plug to use unique passwords on everything that you're using. Use a password manager or something that's going to generate a unique password if you get tired of trying to keep coming up with them and keep coming up and remembering complex passwords. But first and foremost, have multi-factor authentication enabled for everything at the office.
Thank you, Bryan. And I will just add to that the client I mentioned earlier who suffered an attack within the last hour, they were one of those clients who were resistant to implementing MFA and have not done so yet.
Yeah.
That the horse is out of the barn now, but they now may be more amenable to implementing MFA. All right. So, if you believe that your organization has suffered a successful attack, you can try and protect everyone else. Like, we can all work together. There's an easy website to go to, www.ic3.gov. It's the Internet Crime Complaint Center. And you can go report, this bad thing happened to us, right? And that will help, the U.S. government, who really are trying all the time to help us. It'll help them keep track of what's happening where, identify threat actors, and put them into groups so that they know that these attacks are coming from this location. So it can be helpful if you would do that. So, as I said, use the phishing report button, right? If you think you've been compromised, report it immediately, because every minute counts. And then the last thing is, what if you're uncertain? What if you just don't know? Is it, well, it could have been legit. It might not have been legit. I'm not sure if an incident has occurred or not. I see something weird happening on my computer, right? Err on the side of caution, right? Call a trusted person or your IT team. And when I say call a trusted person, imagine you got one of those emails that said you must do something immediately, right? You need to, maybe call that person on the phone and say, did you really send me this email? Or have you been compromised maybe, right? So err on the side of caution, call a person you trust or call your IT team. So here are some tips, the things that you can be doing all the time, not just when you're being attacked, to stay secure. And number one on the list is something that Bryan just mentioned. Don't use your company login credentials at third-party websites. I'm going to put in parentheses here, unless you have to, right? Because that third-party website could have a data breach and expose your credentials to the world. Now, there are a few exceptions to that. Let's imagine that your company contracts with a third-party payroll company or a third-party tax preparation company, and you get your W-2s from them every year, and you have to use your company email address as your login ID. Well, in that case, you have to, but don't use the same password. Like Bryan said, use a different password than you use anywhere else, even if you're forced to use your company login credentials on some third-party website.
Could you
again?
talk,
I think
I know I'm derailing you some.
Go ahead.
Could you talk a little bit about single sign-on and when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate, what that really takes? I know it's a term that not everyone knows the full implications of single sign-on and how complex that can be, but what the benefits of it really are.
So the first thing is that it's kind of self-evident, right, with a name like single sign-on. So in short, what it means is that you can use your company login to automatically get logged into other applications or other companies' systems without you having to stop and put your credentials in, right? So you log into your computer in the morning one time, and then when you click on an icon to open an application, or you click on a website to go to a particular website, if your IT department has pre-configured those applications or those websites to work with single sign-on, then they will securely send your login information to that application or to that website so that you don't have to log in again. So it's super convenient for you. You don't have to remember 3 passwords. You only have to remember 1. And it is reasonably secure because this only happens when your IT department has set it up, right? You can't go out and create single sign-on for yourself, right? So single sign-on is super convenient, but once your credentials are compromised, you know, if perchance you were to give away your credentials, now anyone who has that one login will have access to any application that single sign-on is set up for, and any application, any website that single sign-on is set up for. So single sign-on is a great thing, but it makes your credentials more valuable when your company has set things up for single sign-on. Is that good enough, Brian?
I think so. And I think just pointing out, and this is my opinion, I'm interested if you feel the same way. If you're at that point where you're unsure of whether you want to do MFA or not, do not do single sign-on to the point that you just made. Yes, single sign-on will help you to not have to remember all these different passwords. But if you get compromised, now everything that you're attached to is going to get compromised too. So MFA really has to be the place that you start there.
Right. So be vigilant all the time. I'm not going to beat that dead horse. We've talked about it a lot. But here is an additional one. Don't install, we call it grayware, on any company devices, and don't work from devices that your kids use. So I'm sure you have seen in the news, you might not be able to see it. I'm going to hold up my phone to the camera. Stories about how millions or hundreds of millions of, we'll call them Android devices for the moment, although it can happen with iPhones also. Some common software program that lots of people love and use was discovered to have malware embedded in it, and the bad guys, often China, have been capturing information from you because you installed this little application, right? It could be something as simple as, you know, the calculator program that Google gives me on my Android device isn't very good, but there's this other calculator program that I like a lot better. I'm going to download and install that calculator program, right? Well, if that calculator program has, you know, malware embedded in it, right, then the bad guys are going to be able to get lots of information off of your company device or your own personal device that you use for company purposes. So you really, really should not do that. Only install approved applications and not any others. And we talk about that. And don't work from devices your kids use, right? If your kids are on the internet and visiting tons and tons of websites and playing lots of games and doing unknown things on the home computer, then you are at risk because there could be malware on that device, and you try and log in to a company service, right? And your credentials can be harvested by that device. When you are working from a personal device, but you're trying to do company work, which is very common, it's the most common way these days, bring your own device, right? Make sure you don't save protected information like logins or client data directly on the device itself, so that if that device ever does get compromised, corporate data is not exposed there. Another thing you can do is use web versions of tools whenever possible. So for example, instead of installing an email app to get corporate data or using the native email app on your phone, you can just open up a web browser. Like if you are a Microsoft customer, you can just go to outlook.office.com, right, inside the web browser. And that will make sure that anything you do and see isn't being stored locally on your device. So if you can, use web versions of tools whenever you can. As I said previously, Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call a trusted person, right? Because there are many legitimate circumstances when you're going to get an email from one of your vendors and it's going to say, our banking information has changed. That's no problem. There just needs to be a formal process that everyone follows all the time to validate that information. No changes can be made without talking directly to a trusted person and confirming that the information you received is the correct information. And you can do it very easily and securely. You can say, hey, John, I received this email from you saying that there was new bank account information and the last 4 digits are 1119. Is that correct? And John goes, yes, that's correct. Then it's legit, right?
I would just call a known phone number. Another thing I've seen is they get that fraudulent invoice and they change the phone number, obviously, so that if you do call to verify, you call the number that's on that invoice. And
right.
Unfortunately, I've seen that happen a couple of times as well.
Yep. Look at this last bullet point right here. If someone is wanting information from you, don't call the number that's listed in the email and don't reply directly, right? Go find a correct number or from your own records or from a colleague, right? Find a correct number and make sure you're calling the correct company. I have to tell you that my own mother kind of fell for one of these when this error popped up on her screen and it said, this is Microsoft, you need to call us right away at this phone number. And she picked up the phone and she called who she thought was Microsoft. And she talked to them for like an hour on the phone. And she didn't get suspicious until they asked her for a credit card number. They said, hey, we're going to have to charge you for this service. Please give me your credit card. And at that point, she decided, nah, this isn't legit. And she hung up. Thank goodness. Right. And then, of course, she called me and I had to check out her machine and make sure they hadn't done anything bad. So it came out all okay. But don't call any phone number that someone offers you. Go find a correct phone number and call it yourself. So we've reached the end of this slide deck. When you receive this, there are some good resources. CISA is America's Cyber Defense Agency, and you can click on that link and it'll take you to lots of good resources, right? The FBI has a good page, right? Investigate/cyber, right? And then we offer ourselves. We offer some basic stuff on our website, aldridge.com/cybersecurity-insights. So I think we're about on time. I'm going to stop now. I think we have about 5 minutes left, Brian, if you have questions in the Q&A.
I do, and I've got a message from a couple of people that they're having trouble submitting questions. If you have questions, feel free to email those over to me, bgregory@aldridge.com. If we don't have time to answer them here, I will certainly make sure you get responses there, or shoot me a text, 832-868-1306. But I have gotten a couple of questions here. One of which is, what should we do when tools we're advised to use to get compromised? An example of LastPass.
Say that again, please.
What should we do when tools we're advised to use get compromised? As an example, LastPass.
All right. So the first thing is, of course, you have to take it seriously. And when there is a compromise, the vendor gives specific information about how the compromise occurred and what information was revealed. And they often provide guidance on what you should do, right? And in the LastPass example, I'm going to just say that the really good news is that, your master password to the vault, LastPass they do not have it. They don't keep it. They don't store it. It's not on any of their servers anywhere. There is no way for the attacker who compromised them to ever get your master password. But there was some information, your name, your email address, some of the websites you visit, right? So LastPass did give guidance saying, our recommendation is go out and change your password, on the websites that you visit. But you don't have to worry about your master password having been compromised. No one's going to be able to get into your vault and suddenly start logging into places. And they didn't gain the passwords to any of those places, right? They just gained enough information so that you could be spearphished.
I'd just add on to that a little bit at a higher level, that making sure that you're constantly evaluating the solutions you've got in place is critical, because a solution that was great and keeping up with the times last year may not be the right solution this year. Those of you that are our clients and we're talking to you about Security Plus and our approach there, you'll notice we whitelist a lot of those individual products in there. not because we don't want you to know what they are. We'll certainly tell you what those individual components are. But as time goes on and our R&D team is looking at those, we want to make sure that the password manager we advised on last year is still the best one to use today. And is the security awareness training that we advised on before still the right one to use today? Because unfortunately, as fast as things are moving, some companies just aren't keeping up. So if we don't, so this is coming directly from a client, if we don't have a report phishing option, would Aldridge like for us to forward that email to support at Aldridge? We have been advised employees to block the email and move on. So answer the question directly, Mitch, but also let's tell them how do they go about getting the report phishing icon on their Outlook if they don't have it today?
Yeah, so the first thing is that first of all, I think you should have it, right? Is that, maybe submit a support ticket. There are some prerequisites, right? You have to have Microsoft Office 365 as your email, and Microsoft Defender needs to be set up. So there's some prerequisites, but we really think you should have the report phishing button because you get the most benefit from it. But if you don't, the advice you received actually is pretty much on target, because if you try and forward an email to us that is a phishing email, our own email filters are going to block it, right? So it might not even get to us, right? So really, you should use the tools that are in your hands already. You can go in and you can use the block function. You can go to junk email and say block this domain, block this sender, right? And then you could delete it and move on. But the real best answer is try and get that report phishing button set up. It's not painless and free, but it's not very expensive either. Just get it done.
Yeah. One more here. I have a small business of approximately 10 people. How do I balance investing in security with running a profitable business and not overspending on cybersecurity? And please don't answer, can you afford not to?
So let me first say that I was a business owner myself for 30 years. And I'm an advisor to clients, small businesses like yourself today. So I understand the importance of, you have to run your business for profitability. So the first thing I would say to you is, you may not be able to afford to do everything that is possible, but you should do everything that you can afford. So for example, we have a whole list of, these are what are customary today. And we recommend that this 7 or 8 things are beneficial to every client, right? If that's not within your budget, then say, all right, I'm going to do at least items 1 and 2, or at least items 1 and 2 and 3. Do as much as you can, and someone should prioritize that for you. You want to do, the first thing should be the thing that gives you the most bang for your buck. The second thing should be the thing that gives you the second best bang for your buck. That's my advice to a small business owner, and I know where you're coming from.
Sure. All right. Well, we are up on our time, Mitch. Thank you. I thought this was very good information and very timely and very appropriate for the folks that we had on the call. Again, those of you that are here, you'll receive a survey. Please fill that out. We had a couple of questions come in about, will you get the recording? Yes, you will. So we'll get that back out to you within the week. And so be on the lookout for invites for future events like this. And we hope to get some more in-person events going in your local markets as well. So thank you very much and have a good day.